All right. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Happy
Morning.
Saturday.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining me today. We are going to be painting these violets today. So we kind of have a limited palette, but we're going to be either mixing purple, or if you have purple in your palette, we're going to be using that. So I'm going to set this back over here, and then I'm going to switch my camera so you can see my workspace. It's always, I always set it up ahead of time, but it always is a little bit wonky. Okay, can everyone see that? Okay, so I am going to go over the supplies we need for today. First of all, I have a piece of drawing paper. So we're going to be drawing out our violets first. I also have some tracing paper. So we're going to be drawing our violets and then tracing them and transferring to the watercolor paper. Or if you have a light box or a window, you can hold your drawing up behind your watercolor paper, whatever you prefer. I have a piece of watercolor paper. This isn't exactly 8 by 10, but it's approximately, it's a little bit longer, I think. If you saw my second email, I suggested if you have hot press, this would be a good one to try. If you don't have hot press, cold press is going to be just fine. I use cold press for this example. So, but I was thinking yesterday when I was setting up, these are really kind of delicate, and the hot press paper would lend itself well to this kind of painting. So I am painting on this 140-pound hot press. This is the Fabriano. I haven't actually tried this before, so this will be new for me today. I also have, I'm going to be taping my paper down to this smaller piece of coroplast board. This is handy because it's a, something you can pick up and move around and turn if you need to. And when we did the in-person classes, we used clipboards for that from the dollar store. Now, I also have coroplast board on my work surface that I usually tape down to, but I thought I'd show you how I use this today. And if any of you, I know I've sent a couple of you these in the mail. Sandy, if you would like a piece of this coroplast board that's cut down to this size, I would be happy to send that to you in the mail if you are interested.
That sounds great. Yeah, thank you.
So I'll just connect with you later about your mailing address. I have a whole bunch of extra coroplast board that I've cut down. So happy to share that. Also, I have my palette here. So we're going to be using mostly our cool red. This is a Madder Lake Deep, but you might have alizarin crimson or permanent carmine, and ultramarine blue. We're going to mix those to create our purple. Or if you have a purple paint, you can use that. I have a little pan here I'm going to show you and add that to my palette today, but I'm going to be mixing. I'll show you the difference. So we'll mix and I'll show you purple straight out of the tube or the pan. We're also going to be using this sap green or hooker's green. If you have it, a permanent green will work. Yellow, this is Azo yellow in this brand, but it's like a cadmium yellow, which is what I usually use. And I don't know, I don't think I used Payne's Gray, but you could use Payne's Gray if you wanted to, and if you have it in your palette, but not necessary. If you want to make the flowers a little bit darker, you could use it, but I'm not sure that I did that now that I'm looking at it. I also have my round brush. This is a number 8. Like you've heard me say before, this is more close to the number 6 size I usually use. I have my number 2 pencil. I have some paper towels underneath my palette here, just for cleaning and blotting my brush. I have my water container. I like to keep that right above my palette. I've got a spray bottle. And I also have a toothpick. So if you have a toothpick, this is going to be really handy. So we're going to use this toothpick to make these delicate little lines in our violets. That's going to be a fun technique. Morning, Jen.
Morning.
How are you?
I'm late, but look, I have violet jelly.
Oh, you are an overachiever.
Isn't it beautiful?
It is.
Gorgeous.
I was about to tell a story at the beginning. We were talking about violets in our yard, and
who has violets in their yard?
BJ does.
Oh, hi, BJ.
Hi, Jen.
We're best friends now.
I missed you.
But we used to, of course, you know this because you know my family, but we used to pick violets and make violet jelly like Jen has there. We also used to pick violets and we would paint them with egg whites and then sprinkle fine sugar on them and like make candied violets to decorate, like
Wow.
cakes or something. Yeah.
Cake.
So you can totally eat violets.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful.
And the jelly is delicious.
And
Jen
they
makes delicious jelly.
I have a little patch of them that I'm like really trying hard to keep a little garden of, which Jeff is all on board with, so I'm glad. But
that's good.
When they ripped our trees out, I'm like, please just don't go right here. And they laughed. But luckily, here's the sweet thing is that one of our pets is buried over there, so it not on purpose. Well, he disappeared and we couldn't find him, and then Jeff found him, and I said, well, he died, he must have gone off and died, and we found him in the backyard. So we just kind of buried him where he was. And what's even more interesting is that the dogs just left him alone, which we have 2 dogs out there, but I guess they just know. But so we just put a little marker on there and made it nice, and it just is kind of in the spot where my violets are. So he watches over my violets.
Yeah. The last supply I forgot to mention was tape, artist tape or painter's tape. We're going to be using that today. So I think that is it for supplies. Anybody have any questions about any of the supplies? Okay, great. So we're going to start with our drawing. And this isn't a really complicated drawing. We're not going to use a grid or anything because it's pretty easy. And I'll show you, I'm just going to show you my drawing. So this is my sketchbook. I like to use a sketchbook for my sort of initial drawings. I'm going to be drawing on just plain paper today. But what we're going to be doing is we're just going to draw some circles indicating where our violet blossoms are going to be. And then we're just going to draw some really easy petals. And then we're going to draw 3 leaf shapes. And really, if you look at these are like just heart shapes, really, with a couple little changes. We're going to draw the center of the leaf first to indicate the movement of the leaf, and then our heart, and then we'll add a couple more veins, and then our stem. So it's really a pretty fun and easy drawing. So I've got my drawing paper here, and I'm just going to start by putting on my glasses. And then we're going to start with this center flower. So this is kind of in the middle of our whole paper. So we're just going to start with this one, and then we can just lay out our composition around it. So we're just going to draw a circle kind of like that. Now, don't be too concerned about your circle because this isn't, we're drawing a boundary for the blossom, if you want to think about it that way. So this isn't, anybody nobody has to draw a perfect circle here. But we're just going to draw one right here in the middle, and that's going to be sort of the center of our composition.
About how big?
Mm,
Inch, 2 inches, 3? No, yeah.
this is about 1.5 inches.
Okay,
Maybe a
thanks.
little bit more, maybe an inch. It depends on where you measure it.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Just an idea.
1.5 to 1.75 inches.
Okay.
And this is probably the biggest one. So the other ones could be smaller if you want to.
Okay.
And then I'm going to draw another one kind of above it and a little bit to the left. And you can see I'm just quickly drawing that circle. So it's not really, doesn't have to be anything fancy. And I've got 6 blossoms. You can add more or have less if you want, of course. So I've got one that's kind of like a little bit above it and to the left, so a little bit diagonally. And then I'm going to do another one over here. And then maybe another one up here. So these are like the ones that are open. And then we've got a couple little sideways ones, and I'm just going to put one over here, maybe one up here. So don't be too concerned about placement, but you just kind of want to spread them out on your page in a nice sort of flowing arrangement. All right. So now we're going to turn these into violets. So we're going to draw a smaller circle on the inside of 4 of these, or however many you want to be like the more open ones. That's going to be the middle of our violet. And then I'm just going to start drawing some petals. So these petals are kind of like that shape. I don't know what to call that. You can make them a little bit more squared towards the edge of the circle if you want.
It's like a hot air balloon.
Yeah, it's like a hot air balloon. Some of them are like flatter on the top,
Yeah.
And then I kind of made this one down here a little bit bigger.
Like a fan.
It's kind of like a fan. Exactly. And then there's kind of like 2 on the side. Now, obviously, this is a stylized version of a violet. So, you could study them more and try to make it more representational. But I kind of like to not get too hung up sometimes on trying to make it look exactly. So this one, I'm going to do the same thing up here. I'm going to start with like kind of like that bigger upside down hot air balloon shape. And you can either make it squared towards the edge of the circle or a little bit more rounded. And then I'm just going to do 2 kind of on the side here. And then 2 towards the top. Now this guy over here, I kind of made him a little bit more sideways. So the big petal is kind of a little bit sideways here. And then put these guys on the side. the same thing over here. This one's kind of, that bottom petal is sort of a little bit to the side. Make this one just a little bit fatter. And then for these little guys on the side here, I did sort of an upside down, well, not upside down, like a teardrop shape. And then I don't even know how to describe these shapes, but kind of little petals sticking out from that teardrop. So it's kind of like a flower that's opened up and you're seeing the petals on the bottom there. Same thing for this one up here. So kind of like teardrop shape with like a flatter bottom and then some petals sort of sticking out from that. Everybody doing okay with that?
Yes.
Yep.
Great.
Got a couple more to go.
I worried all week how we were going to do this.
I even drew a grid last night.
Oh.
Jen kind of said, well, really, it's homework. We should do this ahead of time. So I thought, okay, we'll hold up everybody. That's okay. I have a grid for the next class. We need one.
Yeah.
No
Okay.
pressure.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start placing my leaves. Yeah, we could draw circles for the leaves too, if you felt more comfortable. Maybe we should do that. Let's draw some circles just to sort of indicate where our leaves are going to be. If you can call that a circle that I just drew. It's not really circle-ish. But I'm just going to draw kind of like some boundaries here for these leaves. Bigger circles. So mine are like that one's like 2.5 inches. That's a bigger one. 2, 1 3/4 to 2.5 inches. Well, Sandy, I hope it's easier than you thought it was going to be.
It is. It is.
Good.
I was trying to picture how to do it with a grid, and then I thought, well, if we don't do a grid, this is going to be interesting. So this is this is fine.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so now, like I said, we're going to draw these center lines first to sort of indicate the movement of our leaves. So we can just go like that. Curved, nice curved line in your circle. I like to do this when I draw leaves. Draw the center line first, because then it kind of determines, well, obviously the movement, but the kind of the whole shape of the leaf. All right, now we're going to make those heart shapes. So I'm literally just, I'm going to start a little ways in from where I drew that line. And I'm just going to follow that circle around and make a heart shape. So this one's sort of a more rounded shape, but the other side, I'm going to have that line come in like that. I'm going to do that same thing in all three of these. So this side is just nice rounded heart shape. And then this side, I'm going to curve that line in a little bit. And then I'm going to do the opposite for this side, or this leaf. I'm going to make this side a nice rounded heart shape. I just said that I was going to do that and I didn't. And then this side, I'm going to come in like this and curve it in a little bit. And then I'm just going to make a little U shape right at the top of the heart. And that's the shape we're going to use for the leaf, for the top of the leaf. So I'm just making a little U shape here and then just sort of blending that in to the leaf. And then we can just add a couple more veins. So I'm just going to, I'm going to start from that, the bottom of that U shape for all of the veins here. So I'm just going to draw some nice curved lines in the bottom of that U shape. And 2 or 3 on each side, maybe, depending on how it looks to you. I wouldn't put too many because we're going to paint each of these sections individually. So it depends on how much work you want to do.
Note to self.
Yeah. So again, I'm just starting from the bottom of that U shape there. Now I noticed something funny about this painting. I'm going to talk about it now because the next thing we're going to do is draw in our stems. So I added stems for all the flowers and I didn't add any stems for the leaves.
Bah, ha, 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 ha.
Right?
And then you framed it.
And then I framed it. So it's done.
Like,
That's
no
the
big
way
deal.
it's going to be. But do you notice that unless I tell you? No.
No.
So you have 2 options here. You can either make stems for your leaves or you can omit them.
Wow.
Isn't it funny? How
That is funny.
your eye wouldn't even notice that. Okay, so speaking of stems, now we're going to add our stems. So I'm going to sort of start from the top and work my way down. I'm going to start with this guy. And I'm just going to make like a little shepherd's hook sort of hook. Now, what I like to do with my stems, I know they're going to be coming down behind some of these flowers, right? I kind of like to draw the stem, and I'm pulling my pencil with my whole arm, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw, and I'm going to lift up my pencil, and then I'm going to draw, and then I'm going to lift up my pencil and draw, lift up my pencil and finish that stem. So I want to pretend like I'm drawing it all the way down. And, you know, you actually could. This is just our drawing. So if you feel more comfortable just drawing that line all the way through like this, you can totally do that. But if you want to draw it like it's peeking behind, you know, we can just erase these. If you want to draw it like it's peeking behind, like for this one, I would just start the stem here, pull my arm down, lift up my pencil. I'm pretending like I'm continuing that line. I'm going to continue the line here, lift up my pencil, continue the line down there. So you have two options there. One involves more erasing. So I'm just going to do that with each one. Whoops, I erased too much here. So I'm going to draw the stem for this one over here. And I'm going to have this one kind of come over this way and down. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to draw. I'm going to lift up, pretend like I'm drawing, and then have it continue down there. And I'll do the same thing with this guy. So I'm going to do a little curved line here and have it find that flower down and have him come back over like that. I have a couple lines to clean up here. And then let's see, we need one for this guy. So I'm going to have a curved line coming around like this. It's going to peek through that flower, just pulling my arm down and come down like that. So now if you want to draw stems for your leaves, it would be the same. And actually, you already have the start of a stem here with that line that we drew to create the center of our leaf. So you can just continue that line on around, skip over that leaf and down. This guy, you could kind of just have it going like that. And then this one will just continue around like that. Then I just kind of have mine ending in random lengths. You can adjust those however you want. Oh, I guess one thing I forgot to mention was my kneaded eraser. So you can, if you want, at this point, clean up your drawing. I'm not going to, just because I don't really need to. You know, if you're, I'm just using this as a guideline for painting today, but, you know, if you're drawing in your sketchbook and you want to clean it up and sort of make it a full blown drawing, sometimes that's nice to do with some shading and things, but for the purposes of this painting, you don't have to clean up any of the extra lines unless you want to. So we'll take a couple more minutes just to finish up our drawing.
kind of a question.
Mm-hmm.
Not doing stems on the leaves means there aren't so many stems to work into the bottom of the bouquet, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just leave them out.
Or is it too illogical to put leaf stems and not continue them down to the bouquet bottom?
I don't think anybody's going to notice.
Yeah.
I agree.
Nobody's going to count your stems.
Right.
So I
No.
would say whatever you want it to look like, make it that way.
Yeah. I kind of enjoy seeing them above, but
Uh-huh.
but all that down below. And then of course I'm thinking ahead to my technical ability to draw that many stems close to each other without getting all the paint all over everything.
In fact, let me bring this painting back again. I have 6 flowers
Uh-huh.
and there's only 5 stems. So, you know, some of them are connected together.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. You can't
Connected
see
together
them.
before they get to the bottom.
I'm sure all my
That's right.
leaf stems are connected together in there.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah. I know. I was kind of noticing that with this. I've got a lot of stems going on down there. It's okay.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
In fact, I see 4 or 7 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, okay. 7. I like that number, so I'm going to keep them.
It's a good odd number.
Yeah. All right. So when you're ready, we're going to grab our tracing paper. If you want to do it this way. So you have the option of tracing it and transferring it to the watercolor paper, or I know Jen has a special way she does it, or you can also take your drawing. If you have a sunny window, which we don't have today, and put your watercolor paper over your drawing up against a sunny window, or if you have a light box, you could do it that way. I don't have any of those things, so I'm going to show you how I do it. I just put the tracing paper over the top. Now I like to tape it down. I'm going to get a little piece of tape for my drawing and my tracing paper. So I'm just going to put those at the top so they don't move around. And then I'm just going to draw the lines of my flowers. So we don't need any of those extra circles or anything. And I'm just going to start at the top here and sort of work my way down. So I'm just tracing over all of these lines. A light box is nice. I do have a small little portable light box at home that I use, especially, I don't use it so much for this kind of thing. But I like to do pen and ink drawings in my sketchbook. And I don't like to take things out of my sketchbook. So I will actually redraw the whole thing on vellum or whatever paper I'm using when I do a pen and ink drawing. So I usually take a picture of it and print it out, and then use that sort of photocopy and redraw it using my light box so that I don't have to tear it out of my sketchbook. just including all these little stems as I go. But definitely you don't have to draw everything you see. It's a great thing to keep in mind. You don't have to draw everything you think should be there either.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, when people look at your finished artwork, they don't know what you were drawing from. You know. That's all that matters. Really, the subject matter is the inspiration. Let's see, I'm just going to lift up to make sure I got all my lines in there, and it looks like I did. So I'm just going to lift this up. Now I'm going to draw or write the word front, the top of my tracing here. And I'm going to set my drawing aside. I'm just going to leave that tape on there, actually. So we'll take another couple minutes. Finish your tracing. Turn mine over on the whiteboard so you can see that's what you're shooting for right there.
Great.
All right, how's everyone doing with that tracing? We ready to move on? No? A couple more minutes?
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about violets, but I can't seem to ever find them.
Oh. You live close enough to my house, I can bring you some next year when they're back.
I've got a pretty good crop going, but well, I'm in Vernonia.
Oh, okay. I'm up in Forest Grove.
Oh, that's not so far, but yeah, we'll connect next year. I would like a big old garden of them, but they're only around for so short a time. And
right.
I kind of walked around the woods to see if I could, around the lake and around the little trails and stuff to see if maybe there were just some wild ones that I didn't know about. And nope, they're hard to find.
Mm-hmm.
Mine are in my lawn, and my husband's kind enough to mow around them and not put the weed, and he does not weed and feed them.
Mine is underneath trees, so that's been great.
Yeah, mine's kind of under a western cedar. Yeah,
I'd like to dig them up and transplant them, but I murder them every time. It's true. There was one in our grass. I'm like, you don't belong here. Let's go play with your friends. Gone.
Yeah.
All right, while you're finishing up, I'm going to do a little unboxing of this paint pan. So in case anyone's interested. So this is a Van Gogh set. I have Van Gogh pans, and this is what they look like when you buy them. You
It's
can
so
buy
cute.
individual pans. I know. And
you just want one of all of them, right?
exactly.
$50 a piece, Leanne.
These are, I like having I bought this empty and I like kind of like filling it up as I go. I started with, the basic colors we use in class and then a couple more that we've added. This one is called Permanent Blue Violet.
Oh.
I'm not sure what exactly this is going to look like yet, but so they come in a little either plastic or paper. This one looks like wax paper. And you can just pop it in your palette like that. This palette comes with a little brush that has a tool for lifting the pan back out. I didn't do a very good demonstration of that just now, but yeah, I figured out what that was.
We get it.
I thought the handle was broken because it's,
Oh.
see, but then I noticed all these little, that's to like lift the pan back out. Also, it's to lift this tray out that I told you that I discovered was the I know. I felt really funny about that. But one thing I wanted to talk about with these packages is if you're interested in, we've talked about like the pigments, the different pigments. These packages have information on the pigment. So here it's in really, really small letters. I can hardly read that. But right here, it tells you which pigments are in, I don't know if you can see that, are in this paint. So this one is PV19 and PB29. And those numbers are standard across brands. So you can compare brands of, similar named paints or even different named paints to see if it's the same pigment. So like you might have Azo yellow here in this set, but if you look up the pigment number, it might be the same as a yellow with a different name from a different brand. So just a little something to be aware of. It also has a color number here. I'm guessing that's specific to this brand. It also has a light fastness rating on it. So you can get a lot of information if you're interested in it from these little packages. All paint tubes also have these on it. And I started to make a chart of the different brands and pigments. I haven't finished it, but just a little tidbit
Get
of
on that.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so
I need
I am
a good blue.
A good blue. Yeah, ultramarine blue is my favorite. I'll have to look at my color chart and see what the differences are on that one. Okay, so I'm going to move along here in the interest of time. So what I've done is I put the back of my tracing paper pad on my workspace, just because we're going to, with what we're doing here, it might transfer some graphite to your workspace. So if you're worried about that, you might put something underneath your tracing. So I've just turned my tracing over to the back. So this is not the side I drew on. And now I'm going to add some graphite to the back of each line. So I'm just adding some scribbles to the back of each line. And this doesn't have to be anything fancy, but we kind of want some thick lines because we're making kind of like carbon paper here to transfer our lines to our watercolor paper. I just use this number 2 pencil. These are my favorite for drawing because I don't have to sharpen them. And it's just a really nice medium softness, the pencil itself. But if you were looking at like drawing pencils and wondering what to use, you'd want to just be using sort of a medium 2B graphite pencil for this. And if you save these, and if you're not happy with how your painting turned out the first time, you can always use your tracing again. You might have to add a little bit more graphite to the back. Sometimes you don't have to, but you can just save them in a little folder or a pocket in your sketchbook if you want to ever go back to them. The wine bottle and wine glass that we're going to be doing at the end of May, I used a drawing. I modified it a little bit, but I used a drawing that I used on the poster for the Hillsborough Tuesday night market years ago. I did the poster, and part of it, I mean, there's a lot more than just the wine bottle on it, but I sort of did it in sections. And I went back and I retrieved my drawing and my tracing. So I had sort of a baseline to start with. I had to scale it down a little bit for the class, but I'll bring all those materials to the class so you can see sort of my process for that. But just an example of something, I was able to use again. Didn't have to totally recreate that drawing from scratch.
I took the dragonfly and ran it through my printer and reduced it because I needed to make a 4x6 drawing to make a dragonfly for my daughter-in-law, because that's the opening of a multi-frame where she's actually been putting my cards in there. She's had to cut them down from 5x7. I thought I should start the dragonfly with a 4x6, and I'll tell you, doing it in miniature and green next to purple, I learned how to make mud. I practiced ahead of time, thank goodness. But then I used the mud color for the body, so it would match the green and the purple of the wings. So yeah, it was a learning experience. At first I thought I'd never do that one again, but we forget pain as we go on. Yeah, it was kind of fun to learn to do, but I drawing again, essentially.
Yeah, another one like that is the butterfly. It's like, well, I wouldn't ever probably redraw the butterfly, but you can use the same basic drawing and you can, elongate the wings or change it up a little bit. But, if you already have your drawing and your tracing, you have a baseline to start with, you don't have to recreate the wheel and then paint it in a different color, for a different person or something, different project.
I missed the leaf on the front. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to move this pad away. So this is sort of what the back of yours should look like. I have some extra graphite chunks on there, so I'm just going to shake that into my garbage can. And then you can grab a tissue or piece of your paper towel, and we're just going to lightly smooth this out. So we're not really rubbing very hard. We're just smoothing it very, very lightly. Sort of smooth out the excess graphite. We're going to go over all these lines. All right, so I'm going to move on here. I'm going to set my tracing aside, and I'm going to bring my watercolor paper over.
Sorry.
And I'm going to tape it down to stretch it. So I'm going to grab my tape here. I'm going to tape on all 4 sides. Not too concerned about how far up it's going because we're not painting to the edges on this one. So I'm just.
Because I missed class last week of that COVID test, and then they canceled my appointment. I'm very mad.
No.
I know. Rude.
No kidding.
Or rescheduled, I should say.
Okay, so again, this taping down, we're stretching our paper so that it doesn't buckle as we add paint to our paper. So I'm going to bring my tracing back. I'm going to turn it back over so I can read the word front. I'm just going to place my drawing where I think it looks best. I noticed that mine was a little bit crooked, so I'm just adjusting my tracing accordingly. Everything was sort of leaning to the left. Yeah, I noticed that when it was upside down. Sometimes you don't see it when you're looking at it right side up. And now I'm going to take my paper or my pencil again. I'm just going to trace over all these lines again. And this will just transfer our drawing to our watercolor paper. I'm going to lift up and just check after the first couple lines just to make sure. And that looks fine. You don't need to have it too dark, only dark enough for you to see. I'm starting from the top and working my way down just so I can sort of keep track of where I've been. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to remember what you've traced and what you haven't. All right, so I'm going to move on to painting here. We're coming up close on time.
I don't
Okay.
want to paint.
Yes, you do. You want to, you want to paint.
It's a pretty drawing, kind of. I like my trace
It
better
is.
than anything so far.
Yeah.
Oh, so you can trace this or you can make it into a pen and ink drawing. That would be cool.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah. Okay, so we are going to get our palettes ready. Is everyone sort of in a place where they can start this?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Yep.
So I'm going to spray my paints here.
Gravy, 1043.
And so to talk you through the process, what we're going to be doing here, and we're going to work kind of quickly. So have your toothpick and your quickest painting skills ready. So we're going to add clear water to each of these petals, and then we're going to drop the paint in here in the inside and on the edge, and then we're going to quickly take our toothpick and we're going to pull that paint
Aww.
and make those little nice little lines. First, we're going to mix our paint. So we're going to take some of our cool red, whichever one you have in your palette. I'm going to bring some of that into my mixing area here. Now, if you already have a purple, you can feel free to use that if you don't want to mix. I'm going to mix. Actually, I might use some of both, but so I'm going to bring a fair amount of this red in here, and I'm putting my paintbrush in the water to add some drops of water to that. Now I'm going to wash my brush, and I'm going to add some ultramarine blue. I'm going to start with a little bit. Now, really, the color is up to you. Which purple, how purple? Do you want it more like this is a more violet purple color. I know that's kind of hard to see on the camera. If you want it more, I want mine a little more towards blue. So I'm going to add some more blue to that. So you kind of just have to mix until you get the right shade. The great thing about this, I'm using Madder Lake. If you were using Permanent Carmine or Alizarin Crimson and Ultramarine Blue, they mix well together. They're both more transparent, which is what you want when you're mixing colors. Now this is a really good purple. So it's really up to you whether you want to keep adding blue or not. What if I added just a little bit more blue? What would it look like? Oh, that's still good. I kind of like that even better. So I'm just making little swatches on my test paper. That one I really like. Now let's see what the actual, this purple color that I bought, what that looks like. Oh, wow, that's really close. And this was called Permanent Blue Violet. So we're definitely more on the side of blue. So it looks like you can actually make this almost the same color. This is a little bit more intense. So it looks like I added a little bit more blue to get it to that color. So I'm pretty happy with that. How's everybody doing with that?
When I'm looking at your swatches online this way, they all look like they're almost black. If you faded them out a little to the right with more water, I think we might be able to tell.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Sure.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. It's just for the future. Yeah. I lost my swatch paper.
Now, if you tried to mix this purple with a cadmium red or a more opaque red or a more opaque blue, you might end up with a muddy color. But these are more transparent, so it's a little bit easier to mix. Okay, so I'm going to use this one that I mixed. I'll just set this up here.
It's very stormy here.
Ooh, really?
Yeah, and the lights just flickered.
Uh-oh.
Living in the woods.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to start with this one up here. And again, I'm just painting clear water inside these petals. Well, I hope you don't lose power.
Me too.
No, I know you won't be able to see this, but you don't want this to be puddling. But you want to have enough water that it's not going to dry out. And then I'm going to touch the tip of my paintbrush. We're not going to need much for this. The tip of my paintbrush And I'm going to start with the inside here, and I'm going to go around that little circle. I'm just going to let it bleed into the water. So I'm leaving that little circle. So I'm actually going outside the lines of the petals to sort of connect them here. And I'm going to add a little bit on the edge here of each one. Now, if it looks like it's sort of drying up on you, you can wash your brush and add a little bit more water carefully and sort of smooth that out. We do want some white space in there. I'm going to blot up some of this. And then we're going to take our toothpick and we're going to scrape it along the inside of the petal, making those little lines. And what that's doing is it's making a little, it's scoring the paper there and it's drawing the pigment into those lines. Now that one dried up too fast. So I'm just going to add a little bit of water here.
Are you leaving are you leaving non-watered spot in the middle of petals or just trying to put less pigment in at the edges? Are you filling the entire petal in with water or are you leaving? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got to figure out how to ask my question here.
Now, if you need to smooth out the edges, get a little bit more paint and smooth out your edges here. Or you can go back and do that at the end too. All right, I'm going to come up here to this one and do the same thing. So I'm painting water inside all of the petals. And then I'm just going to drop some paint in there. Now on this one, I'm just kind of going around. I got too much water. I'm just sort of going around the edges here. And then I'm going to come back with my toothpick. I'm going to make those little lines just on the petals here. So I'm just going to continue around. I go over to this one. I'm just painting the water inside the petal. I like to point my brush towards the pencil lines if possible. Now, if you have something that you can move, you can turn it like this as you go. Pick up some of my purple here. And again, I'm sort of starting on the inside, letting that bleed. And adding some on the edges. And if you're like me and it's drying too fast for you, you can just come back in here and add a little bit more water. We don't want it to puddle up per se. So if you find that that's happening, you can blot your brush and just pick up some of that extra. And I'm going to do it right in the middle of the petal. So I have that white space. And then I'm going to grab my toothpick and I'm going to make those little lines coming out from the center. Yeah, if you're noticing that you want a little bit more darkness on the inside, you can always come back in here and add just a little bit more, either when it's still wet or do it when it's dry also. Just smooth it out a little bit. With some water. And I'm just going to work my way around here. Painting water on this next flower. And then adding my paint. Did everyone's purple turn out the way they wanted it to?
Yeah.
Good.
Trying to remix it with less water because it's just too watery to use. I'm not getting the color to dip into the way I want.
Uh-huh. So I'm just kind of smoothing this out a little bit. When I did this at home, my air is much different in my house than it is here. It's like super dry in here, so everything dries super fast. So I had much more working time at home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm just adding those little lines with the toothpick here. Maybe just a little bit more purple in the center here. I'm going to work my way around this one. Is everybody doing okay on time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Looks like we're going to go a few minutes over.
Not to worry.
Okay.
Well, and I can putz with flowers into the future here.
And if you're using the hot press paper, you're gonna notice it's a little bit different experience.
I got it to do more dragonflies, and it happens to be on a block because that's all she had down at colors and it's arches, and yeah, it's different to work on it. I'm working over a vent that's just blowing air, so like you, it's pretty.
It dries pretty
dry.
fast. It dries a little faster.
Really fast, all of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay. We still have water in the jar.
Yep. It's a little less forgiving.
Okay.
But it does give you that nice smooth look. When I was doing really detailed flowers all the time several years back, I always used 300-pound hot press paper.
Mm. And you didn't have to tape it, you could just paint.
Yeah, I usually just painted directly without stretching it on the 300-pound.
Is there a process of wetting the paper first, taping it down with gummed paper with a, water-based, and then letting it dry overnight, which, like, if I would ever take the time, let's be honest here.
Yeah, that's how we did it in college. Or people would staple it down to a board after they did that. I don't really see any. I don't know what the advantage is.
Yeah, okay.
Seems like they told us there was like some binders in the paper or sizing that would, you were like kind of getting rid of that when you did that process.
I wonder
But,
if it's
I don't really know anybody who does that anymore. So I don't know if that's still part of the paper making process.
It seems like a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. And you have to have a big enough tub to put your paper in, a clean tub.
Oh.
You don't want to put it in with anything that could have any oils or, anything like that. So I just don't know what the purpose would be anymore. We have access to cheap painter's tape.
Right.
And maybe if you're doing like really big washes on really big pieces of paper, there's some advantage to doing it that way. I'm
just trying to learn.
Yeah. Okay, so not to rush anyone, but I am going to start on the leaves.
Perfect.
It's the same process, only we're not doing the toothpick. So I'm using this sap green. I'm going to pull some of that out into my mixing area here. And I'm going to use a little yellow too. Now I was painting yesterday, so I already have yellow in my mixing area. And kind of like BJ alluded to, you don't want this to be too watery.
Yeah.
This paint.
Live and learn over here.
And well, I'm going to take a little bit more of my yellow. And this is the same basic process. We're going to go section by section. And you can do 2 sections at a time if you sort of skip sections. So I just skipped one. Maybe I'll do 3. Multiple sections at a time here. As long as you put enough water on there. So I'm just painting with the clear water first. You don't have to do it this way. I just kind of like the look of the wet and wet when you start with the clear water. You could start with a lighter green and add darker green and your yellows. So I've got 4 sections that are wet, and I'm just going to drop some green into those. And I'm just going to kind of go around the edges here and let the paint kind of do its own thing. And flow into that water. And I'm really kind of using the tip of my brush right now, so I can sort of get into those little corners. I'm going to sound a bit like a commercial here, but I swear I'm not selling paintbrushes. This one, I just wasn't sure about these at first, but this Princeton Velvet Touch, this is the number 8 round. It has a really, really nice point where you can get into really detailed places with this kind of medium-sized brush. Now I just touched my paintbrush to the yellow, and I'm just adding a little bit of yellow in where those white spaces are. Now I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to go to my next leaf, and then I'll come back and paint the alternate sections. Or I'm going to let it get pretty dry. Now you wouldn't have to do this if you don't want to. You can go ahead and paint the other sections now if you want to have some of them flow into each other. I'm kind of going for some white space in between each section. So I'm going to let it dry just a little bit. I'm going to come over here to this leaf. Do the same thing. So I'm just painting water in these alternate sections, and then I'm going to come back here with my green, and I'm just dropping some paint in there, letting it flow into the water. Get a little bit more green here. That looks like it's already dry, so I pushed my luck with doing 4 sections at a time. So I'm just going to add some more water here.
Okay, but your water looks super dirty.
Because I touched some, oh, you mean this water? It is super dirty.
But you're not using that. You're not using that.
I am using that. That's what I'm using.
I'm not getting that dirty watercolor in your painting.
Yeah.
I'm paranoid. Once it turns a color and the colors don't match, I'm out.
And a lot of people do, like, they'll have one container for washing their brush and one container for doing this. So that's totally a concern for some people. Me, it's like, yeah, if I knew that I really, really needed clean water, like for these, it might be a little bit different story. You know, like I wanted this to be like super clean. The green, it's like, I know that I'm not too concerned about it at this point because I'm not leaving a lot of white, and the water that I'm painting, yes, I can see that it's a little bit tinted.
Would this add like extra flavor?
But yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you for asking. Pointing out my bad habits.
No, it's not. I would do that all day long if I didn't think it was going to turn my painting a different color.
Well, it depends.
So that's
on
why I'm asking.
like for this, I just know that it's not going to be a big deal. But yeah,
Okay.
if I was super concerned about it, I was doing a really detailed painting, something where I knew I needed to definitely have clean white space, I would clean my water. But like right
Okay.
now, if I was to paint this on here, see that looks dirty, but I just painted it on here and you can't see anything.
There's really nothing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
I'm noticing that as I go. And if you know, if I
Okay.
painted this water on here and it turned brown on my paper, I'd be like, oh, I gotta change that.
Okay.
You know,
So that's normal.
I think it
is what
looks
you're
worse
saying.
than what it really is.
Well, I just was concerned it was going to change the color totally, and that's not what I wanted.
Yeah.
So I just didn't know.
No.
Okay.
Thanks for asking, because I've wondered also.
See, how does that not just turn everything? But I mean, maybe it's because the pigment falls sometimes to the bottom and.
Yeah. But yeah, a lot of, people recommend having 2 containers, which is probably best practice.
But still.
But it's
good to know that it's not really going to affect anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When we were doing the in-person classes, if I noticed that people's water was getting really dirty, I would change it out mid-class, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just going to add a little bit of yellow in here. I don't think I said that. And that's totally optional. I kind of think it just kind of warms it up a little bit. We're going to add yellow in the middle of the flowers, so it'll kind of pull that together.
Good one.
I'm just adding a little darker green, kind of where I noticed that, like on the edges, to give it some depth. A lot of people, clean out their palette, like the mixing areas religiously. Our instructor or professor in college, he didn't use a palette. He used like a plate, like a dinner plate.
Yeah.
And just put the paints on the outside edges. And he never cleaned out the mixing area.
Really?
No. So it was like, I don't know, incorporating, it's like it reminded me of like cast iron pan, that you season and you just rinse it out sort of before you make the next thing.
Gross, so
for years I never like cleaned out my mixing area unless I had
gross.
When I had this
But
big
I mean, how does it not
palette.
turn brown?
Because you use the paint. You just keep certain colors mixed in certain areas.
Oh, okay.
And,
I mean, I'm just using these little things from dollar store, right?
Yeah, so that's a little bit different story. I'm talking about like a big like
No,
a
of
big
course.
plate with like a, use the inside for the mixing area.
Right.
And then you just have, paints mixed around, sort of,
Yeah.
located next to
And you're
the
always
actual
mixing
tube
more.
paint. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, that's one thing.
Yeah. So I'm going to come back over here to this leaf and I'm going to finish these up. So I'm doing the same process where I painted the water first, and then I'm adding the green paint. And I'm leaving just a little bit of white space for that, the veins of the leaves.
Are you using a darker color? Like, did you mix a little more green in there?
I think I just got it a little darker right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It just ended up being a
Gotcha.
little darker. Yeah. It wasn't on purpose.
I mean, I'm sure there are striped leaves, but
yeah, it's not really what I was going for.
gotcha.
And it's drying lighter than it first appears also.
It is a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to add a little bit of yellow in there. I'm actually kind of like just sort of blending it right towards the middle of the leaf with the other leaves I previously painted.
So as a finished painting, we're filling in the white spaces that we left so they wouldn't bleed into each other. So they aren't white segmented, excuse me, leaves anymore.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
We just skipped over them because we were letting them dry.
Right, yeah.
But there's no white space in between. So basically it's the edge of what you painted that gives you that vein look.
I'm leaving a little bit of white space.
Tiny bit?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Let me lift this up a little bit so you can see.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Sorry, I thought I said
Clearly
that.
no.
I thought I said
You
that.
did say that. You said we were painting them separately, but you can't see it here really far away.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to paint this time. I wanted to watch you paint because I feel like I miss stuff when I don't watch.
Oh.
So that's why I'm not painting right this second. I wanted to watch you paint because I'm missing techniques because I'm busy painting.
I agree.
Interesting.
I miss things when I'm painting.
So yeah, I drew and it's cute, but
Yeah. So I'm leaving just a little bit of white space. Now, when I did this at home, like I said, I didn't alternate these like this. I just painted them right next to each other, but I have a little more experience with doing that and leaving white space. And I thought that would be kind of difficult.
totally.
Yeah, you've organized it for our skill level and our knowledge really well. And I've noticed that about all your classes. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks.
Also, I'm usually much happier with things after they've dried.
Always.
Thoroughly dried.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It looks different when it's dry.
But like even the next day or the evening dried, not just 10 minutes, 15 later. Oy vey.
Now I'm noticing I have kind of some, and it's probably not completely visible on the video, but I have some lines that are not clean. They're kind of jaggedy. So I'll probably go back with a little bit of green when it's dry, and clean those up. I don't think I did that on the original. Yeah, I don't think I didn't do it on the original painting. I just left it, and I left the pencil lines and everything, which I do sometimes. I know some people don't like pencil lines. Sometimes it's like after I erase the pencil lines, I don't like it as much.
Huh. Well, it just adds a little bit of.
Yeah, it adds just a little bit of definition sometimes to certain paintings.
Well, then it's obvious it wasn't printed by a machine. It's hand done work.
Oh, wait, now it's sunny out.
Yeah, I've got blue skies.
Okay.
You don't like the weather, just wait 10 minutes.
Yep. Especially this time of year.
Yeah.
Weird. Because, yeah, I'm like, oh, it's nice. And I put my fuchsias out and melted them. Too soon.
Did they freeze?
They did. Well, I mean, they're looking droopy. Okay. My hydrangeas froze. My brand new baby hydrangeas froze.
Oh, no.
So now they're up here with me where I can talk to them and nurse them back to health. They can watch us paint violets and know that maybe they'd be next.
Absolutely.
They're red hydrangeas, so I'm really excited to get them to grow.
Maybe we should do a hydrangea class again.
Yes. Adam brought me a red clematis yesterday.
Oh, nice.
I've never even heard of these things.
We had a nearly red lilac.
What?
In Wisconsin before we moved here. Yeah, it was, you're mixing up purple and then just drop a bunch of your red into it. It was it was neat.
I would have dug it up and brought it with me.
Well, there's the thing about
excuses.
Moving plants across state lines and
it's true, but you didn't have to tell anybody.
Everything went into storage, and so it didn't work.
Oh,
yeah, that's okay. There are more plants in our future.
I'm trying to stick with red because I can't paint my house. I can only really do red flowers out front, but finding red deer resistant flowers is nearly impossible.
Yeah, we coexisted with deer in Corvallis, and every time I'd buy something beautiful from the nursery, they'd eat it. Really expensive deer food. And if they didn't like it, they'd already pulled it out and spit it out.
Right. They didn't care. They were rude.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt your
Are we having too much fun?
Wonderful story and just tell you that I'm starting on the stems here. No, I love it. And I'm just using my small brush. I'm just basically painting over these stem lines with green.
Hmm.
So nothing fancy with this process.
I like the leaves all jaggedy. Maybe it's
Yeah,
more
I'm
pronounced
liking
where
it.
you are, but I
Yeah, I'm liking it more now that it's drying, you know, and it's like kind of settling. When I get to these little sideways blossoms, I'm just sort of painting the green just a little bit down onto the blossom.
Ah, good idea.
And then sort of just depending on where the stem is located, I might be painting in an upwards direction or downwards. Sometimes it's easier, like for these, to paint up than down. And I'm just using sort of the tip of this brush and holding it pretty straight up and down.
Mm. Thank you.
And when I get to these leaves, I'm just sort of touching it to the inside of the leaf to connect it. And kind of round out that U shape that we made there. And then I'll just finish these stems. And lastly, you can either use this brush or your medium round brush. I'm going to just take some yellow straight out of my pan here and paint yellow on the inside of these flowers. So I'm just kind of touching a little bit of yellow in there.
wow.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, thanks for hanging in while we went over.
Oh, this is good.
Oh, wow.
So pretty.
Lovely.
I know you're all still sort of finishing up. Does
Uh-huh.
anyone have any questions?
No. Thank you for making it so easy to do it. I was really, the trepidation of doing the drawing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Wow.
Yeah, I definitely have some interesting, I got a kind of a really interesting like area right there where it kind of blended together. It just reacts differently on this paper when when it does that than what you would see on the cold press paper with more texture.
Oh, are you using hot press? I didn't realize you
I'm
were
using hot press. Yeah. So on
Wow.
this one I used cold press. Just the regular Arches 140-pound cold press. And this one's the hot press. This is the Fabriano.
Have you ever used Arches hot press, and can you compare it with
Yes.
Fabriano?
I have used it extensively. That's the one I was talking about where I used the 300-pound.
Oh, okay.
When I was doing the more detailed stuff.
Right.
I used 300-pound hot press all the time. Loved it. Now this is a little bit different because it's 140-pound.
Yeah.
And honestly,
So what do you think?
I bought this just because this is what they had at the art supply, and I just wanted to try it. I don't like the 140-pound as much.
Oh, well, sure. Okay.
It's just,
It is
um,
what it is.
thinner, which is, it's fine. But as far as like paper goes, it's nice and smooth. Yeah, I'd have to sort of compare the two at the same time,
Uh-huh.
to give you a better answer, but I like it. It's a nice paper. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining me today, and I will see you next time.